What?
Subscribe.
Subscribe. We'll highlight all that. Don't you worry.
I'm just
But of
saying,
course,
you gotta remind people. You want to get
Subscribe right now.
subscribe.
subscribe. Of course.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
So Ben, welcome home. Well, welcome back to the program. Week one, pre-qualifying for QSchool. How was it? Saw you had a pretty rough those first 2 days. I was biting my nails.
No, I didn't have it rough at all. I just wasn't really scoring well. So don't listen to any hyperbole that comes out of Steve's mouth, ladies and gentlemen. But
Look, I didn't watch you play. I simply saw a number at the end of the scorecard and thought, oh shit, might not get it.
I shot 72-70. Like, you're acting like I shot like 78. Look, I mean, I went out and I shot 72, 70, 67 on a par 70. It's really a par 72, but they made it a par 70. So a lot of the guys were bitching about that. I was just like, I don't really understand what the problem is. The one hole 12, they made it into a par 4. It's literally a driver chip 8-iron. Like, it's not. It is a par 4. It should always be a par 4. And then the other par 5, again, it's like a driver. I hit anywhere from 7-iron to 5-iron into the hole. So it's a par 4. It's just back into the wind. The tee shot's the hardest part. No, I mean, it was a good week. It was stressful for sure, just because I cracked my driver after this. I don't know when it happened, honestly. Basically, I wasn't happy with how I drove the ball late, kind of like throughout the second round. And I bogeyed my last 2 holes. One was a par 3, and the other one was the par 4 ninth, which is not a hard hole. And funny enough, I missed the fairway all 3 days, and the only par I made was on the last day when I made like a 6-footer. It's literally like a driver sandwich hole, and I had 54 feet out of the right rough. So, like, it's not a hard hole. But yeah, so I was like, all right, like, I wasn't happy with how I drove it. I just bogeyed my last 2 holes to shoot even, and I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna go get lunch and then practice. I had to run some errands just because I left my liquid chalk on the 10th tee when I teed off that morning, because I teed off on 10. And I don't know why I took it out of my bag, because I didn't need it. But I left it. I got distracted by the starter because he was like talking to us about literally nothing important. And I just left it. And I was like, oh, shoot, I forgot it. It's fine. It's not super hot out yet. And so I'll just get it at the turn, because you walk past 10 to get to 1 from 18. It was nowhere to be seen. And I was like, okay, some schmuck probably fucking took it, because I don't know if I'm not sure if people know this. Chalk is kind of like almost like a delicacy in pro golf, I've learned. It helps you grip the club and stuff. And for someone who doesn't use a glove like me, I use a lot of it. And so it was nowhere to be seen. Played the whole second 9 without it. Was just drying my hands. And I was like, all right, I got to go get some chalk. Went and got chalk, went and got lunch. And then I was cleaning my clubs, and I saw above the face of my driver that the crown was fractured. So it's not a full crack. And so per the rules of golf, and I got some clarity, because I was like, well, great. Like, now I was going to go back and practice anyway, but now I had to really go back. And so I met with the tour officials, and I was like, what can I do? Because I know in a tournament, the way it was fractured, there was no separation. It wasn't like a big, it wasn't that noticeable. Like, literally, the light had to be shining on it in a certain way for you to see it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I just, I asked the guy, he was like, look, like, you can use it. You can use it tomorrow if you want. He goes, but you're definitely running the risk of making it worse. And the only way you'd be allowed to take it out of play during the round is if there's an actual separation. And he's like, so right now, like, And he's like, and this could make the ball go offline significantly, which is true. And so I was like, great. So I asked the guys in the pro shop if they had any Callaway Paradigm heads, triple diamond, 10.5, and they did not. And then the head pro was like, I have the Callaway triple diamond AI smoke, 10.5 degrees, which is basically the new iteration of the Paradigm.
Yeah.
Paradigm is last year's driver, and the AI smoke is this year's. And I was like, he was like, it's at my house. And so he let me follow him home. And great guy. I mean, great guy. He let me follow him back to his house on St. Simon's Island, invited me in. He gave me the driver, and I was like, the best part, because I like literally, this is how stupid the game of golf is. The weights, basically, because I was like, okay, like I'm sure I can just like, if the weights aren't the same, because my Paradigm has a 14 gram or ounce, I don't know what it is, but it's 14 and 2.
Yeah.
I have the 14 in the heel, and then the 2 in the toe, so it helps the face not rotate as much, so to kind of eliminate that left miss. But I was like, all right, like whatever his weights are, I'm sure I could just take my weights out and put him in. Well, his weights were the same, thank goodness.
Wow.
But the problem, even but the thing is, so I avoided any sort of problem. But if they had been different, I couldn't even put my Paradigm weights in the AI smoke head. They wouldn't have fit. I don't believe they would have fit, because the diameter of the actual circle of the weight was different. And I was like, so like, thankfully I was like, okay. So I got the driver, put it on my shaft, and I went back to the range. I must have hit like 30 balls. Okay. And I noticed like a difference. It definitely feels different for sure. The face and head feel much more stable than the Paradigm, which is good. It sounds different. Definitely had a harder time turning it over. Meanwhile, like, it's the same loft and same weight, but look, a new driver, like every single driver head, like you could literally, like, every single driver head's a little bit different. Just like every single shaft is going to be a little bit different. Even if you get the quote unquote identical head or identical shaft, they're always going to be a little bit different. It's just machine error.
Yeah.
And so now I'm dealing with a different head. And so I'm like, okay, look, like I kind of messed around with like the setting, the weights a little bit. I like switched the weights, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep them the same, just to eliminate the left side of the fairway, the left side of the hole. I hit it good enough. I hit some good ones where I needed to hit them. Not like they really amounted to much, but like, hitting the fairway on the third hole out there was definitely a plus for sure. I just noticed like the ball flight was a lot flat. I felt like a lot flatter. I like to see the ball kind of launch like this. But I felt like the ball was kind of launching a little flatter, and so it wasn't staying in the air as long. So regardless, I did my job and I did what I needed to do, and I'm just gonna continue to. I took 2 days off, and today was my first day back practicing without a driver. Your bag feels very naked without a driver in it. It looks so, but look, I mean, I made some great putts, and when you go out there without a driver, with a driver that is not your own, and you need to put a good round together, and you hit 17 greens, and the one green you miss is literally half a club short, like that's chip-inable. I did my job, and that's all I had to do. So I made some great putts, and I don't think I missed a putt within 8 feet of the hole all week. I didn't make a lot of putts, so I got to work on that a little bit because definitely, I mean, I remember the second day I had a stretch where I lipped out pretty significantly. I lipped out 3 putts that should have gone in, and they just didn't. But I made some good I had some good makes on some double breakers on first and second hole, which were my back nine the last day. And yeah, so I'm getting ready for first stage. I don't know where I'm going. I believe they tell us like after all of pre-qualifying is over with. So it's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, I highly doubt I'm going to get anything in the state of Florida just because those are generally filled up with pros that, you know, who have status, some semblance of status somewhere. And, or you have to finish like top 5 or top 10 at your pre-qual site, which I finished 21st. So if I can get something I can drive to and not have to go to Houston like I did last year, that would be pretty dope. So, and that course isn't even hosting anything. So thank goodness. But yeah, so that's really it. Do you have any other questions for me, Steven?
No, just I was kind of upset. I love how in pre-qualifying you get some really interesting names that pop up. And part of me with like dumb hope being that you were in Georgia, but obviously there was the pre-qualifying in Texas, which is where he was, or which is where he will be. Or I think it was in Texas. Could be wrong. But Tony Romo was trying to tee it up at pre-qualifying to no avail for like the 8th time in his career. I think like John Smoltz did it for the hell of it. So it's always funny seeing some of the names that pop up in pre-qualifying, seeing if they can make a push. But hopefully we get you a little bit closer to home. Obviously there's a lot of different places to go for first stage, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And I will say, like this year, this was the lowest I've ever seen it at Brunswick. They have it there pretty much every single year.
Mm-hmm.
2 over was the number. Last year was 6 over. The year before, I think it was 7 over. So I mean, like the winner last year shot like 8 under or 10 under or something. I think the winner this year shot like 18 under. I will say, like, I think it was a combination of, because I talked to my dad about it. I think it was a combination of the field just being better. And I mean, look, because I played with a kid in the practice round. He went to Virginia Tech, and they're not that good. They're not like as good as you'd think they are at golf, but like still, like it's an ACC school. It's a power school. Played with the kid the first day who played at USF for 4 years and then Pepperdine for his last. There was a kid there from, I think, Texas. I went to University of Texas. The AM that won, I think he's from Gainesville, so it leads me to believe he's probably at Florida. Like there were a lot of really good players there. And also, look, there was a lack of wind. So, I mean, I think the last day it was probably the windiest that we had, but the first 2 days there really wasn't much going on. And the course was relatively soft too. So you could definitely take it deep out there if you were making putts. So, but yeah, I don't know. My track record on Donald Ross courses continues to be very strong. So,
well, you are in luck. There's a couple of Donald Ross courses in first stage, I believe. So you might get lucky. Who knows?
Wah wah wee wah.
Wah wah wee wah. Very nice. Oh, for fuck's sake! I missed having you here. It was fun with KB, but getting to shoot the shit with you is always a different level of exciting at times.
Yeah, no, I mean it's nice to be back. Sorry, I'm sorry, everybody. I couldn't be here on Monday. You know.
Oh yeah. Okay, it's all right.
You know, I had some important business to take care of in southern Georgia. But
are you getting a new driver like soon?
Yeah. So okay. So basically, the issue was that I finished on Friday, and so like it's a long drive too. So like I couldn't make it back in time to West Palm to like ask them to call Callaway, even though Callaway's out in California. They're 3 hours behind. There wasn't enough time. And so I went on Saturday. And mind you, like, was today a holiday?
No. I don't know.
All right. Because I spoke to, so basically, okay, no, today wasn't a holiday. So I guess, I don't know if they're not open on Mondays, but I walked into this place at Ibis with like the club fitting studio, and I talked to the guy, and he was like, I was like, hey, look, like I fractured my driver, and I showed him, And then he was like, okay. He's like, look, it's last year's head. They should have another one. They should have the exact same one. He had me take my weights out. And then he was like, yeah, we're going to call on Tuesday. He's like, it could take a couple weeks. I have a really hard time believing it's going to take a couple weeks because I've had it pretty much like this is, mind you, this is the second head of this driver that I've gone through. So the first one, I stressed the face. And then, so like and I know you could feel like there was a bump on the face. So anytime I'd hit it high on the face and off the toe, which if you want to know how to hit it really far, that's where you're supposed to hit it because it makes the ball elevate like fucking crazy. No spin.
Okay.
So like, yeah, I don't have a club with me, but like literally like slightly off the toe and a little bit high on the face. It'll launch it high with no spin and it'll draw and that thing will hit the fairway and tumble.
Good to know.
That's how I hit my longest tee shot ever in competition of 370 when I was in college. Yeah.
Downhill?
Par 5. Yeah, a little bit, but like nothing like crazy. And then of course I had 6-iron into this par 5 and I made par. But regardless.
Bro, into 370 sneaks out with par.
Mind you, I made like a 4-footer from par too. Like it was not a good look.
Oh, absolutely horrible.
But so basically, like, I remember the first time I was but I was like hitting it like a little high in the face, which I don't try to do that. I try to hit it in the center of the face, but that's generally my miss is a little high off the toe. But every time I would do that, the ball would just nosedive out of the air, like just a duck hook. And I was like, something's not right here. And so I remember just running my finger over the face, and there was a bump right there, and I was like, that's what it is. So it was a defect, or like it was either a defect or I stressed the face. So I ended up having to send that one back. They sent me the new one, which I just fractured in the crown, mind you. So that's the second paradigm I've gone through. That's the fourth Callaway head that I've gone through in my life.
Nice.
So once in college, 3 times as a pro. I cracked the face of my Epic at Sapphire Valley my freshman year. Like caved it in completely on the range, like 15 minutes before the round. My Epic, because I went to TaylorMade, then I went back to Callaway, fractured the crown of the other Epic that I had, and then stressed the face of the Paradigm, and then fractured the crown of this Paradigm. So Callaway's got to figure it out. So
may have to switch to a Mizuno driver.
Shut up.
What?
Those things are. I've heard those things are like BB guns.
Dude,
that's literally. I know someone. I know a teaching professional who was on staff with them. Like everyone sits there and they are like their irons second to none. Like they have some of the most underappreciated irons out there. But he's like, their driver is a fucking BB gun. Like he went from Mizuno and he was hitting their driver 285. He went to Callaway the next year. He was hitting at 310.
It's fucking ridiculous. I'm actually, I just got quoted for my irons at Pete's out in Mineola, and I'm gonna get a 250 trade-in value on my irons that I have, and I think I'm going to end up. I got to see what works, but. The Mizunos, they would have charged me. It's $100 for the fitting, but then only $750 with the trade-in value. So honestly, it might be the most effective in terms of cost efficiency. Everything else is well into the thousands. So we'll see. But hopefully, by around February, I'll probably have my new irons in hand, and then I'll reshaft the driver and my wedges, and we'll go from there. But exciting stuff. Possibly gonna join you in the Mizuno gang.
Get in the Hole is brought to you by PHI Apparel Company, our incredible merch partners. PHI Apparel Co. provides unique designs and high-quality clothing from t-shirts to hoodies for every golfer around. With their original designs for all, there's no doubt you'll stand out on the course, the driving range, or at the 19th hole. go to phiapparel.co and use code underground at checkout for 10% off any order. That's code underground at phiapparel.co and grab exclusive Get in the Hole podcast merch and support your favorite golfers.
I totally cut you off on the outro to the Open.
It's okay. I wanted to just share this with you because I thought it was so. I updated. So a long time ago, I had an issue with my email. Someone basically tried to hack me in Egypt. So like the email to my phone just stopped working completely. And then I had some laptop issues, so I couldn't use my laptop at all. I finally got it back this week. The screen was broken, I guess, so they had to replace the screen. So I needed a way to access my email because I don't like doing it through Safari. It's just like kind of not it. Like it's just like kind of the layout's weird. And so I figured out my email, but the problem was like it updated my contacts. And so anyone's number who I've gotten this year or like the last couple years, gone. Like I have the texts, but it's just the phone number. It doesn't have the name or anything. And so your name was one of them that disappeared, you and Kyle. So I decided to add a picture of you, and I wanted to share it for the public. So this is my picture.
Yes. Yeah. I look like Fat Perez in that photo.
Dude, how good is that? Were you a little nervous, like about about a picture?
Knowing you would have went into like the annals of like my mom's Facebook to find a photo of me.
Oh, you should
like
not.
Middle school. So it's really funny. One of my best friends, Mike, who you'll meet at the wedding, I have his photo from high school football, and he looks so different now. And he gets mad at me because whenever we go to bars, we have this app. It's called Untapped, and you can basically track and rate all of the beers that you drink. And me and him always go out places, try new things. And occasionally, when you go to a bar and they have the TV or the screen or whatnot, and it has the beers on tap, on the bottom lower third, it'll have people who have checked in. So my photo on this app is his high school football photo. So wherever I go, and for the most part, not everyone uses the app anyways. We've been going to this bar for years in Bayshore tap room, and his photo is constantly up on those screens. And I'll have friends send me and him photos and say, "Hey, just saw Mike's sophomore year high school football photo up on the screen." It's the funniest fucking thing, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, no, didn't know what you were gonna pull out for that one.
Mind you, just one other thing. So I posted a video of me hitting a wedge, and my mom just roasted me in my DM saying not quite as good as mine. ... So thanks, Mom. I love you.
Oh, Deb. Deb's killing it. That was one of the highlights of my week when I was caddying for you. She was hilarious.
Yeah, she's a funny woman. I love her. She puts up with my crap and stress, and so
unfortunately we all do. Anyways,
okay, fine.
Let's get into the good stuff. Welcome back, Ben. Welcome back into Get in the Hole. Steve McAvoy, Ben Pirro back after a successful pre-qualifying week down in Brunswick, Georgia. Coming to you live from the underground part of the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you can get a hold of us. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and betting tips from across the golfing world, including some news this week, particularly in the LIV sector, as well as the President's Cup this week, the 16th iteration of the President's Cup. And, of course, as always, Get in the Hole, proudly presented by some of the best sponsors in the biz, including our boys over at Tomahawk Shades. You got to get on Tomahawk Shades right now, tomahawkshades.com or the Tomahawk Shades app. They've been absolutely crushing it. 70% off their fall sale right now. Sunglasses, blue light glasses. You can get your snow goggles getting ready. And, of course, their new flagship snapback, all golf themed, right at Tomahawk Shades. Rep by some of the biggest names in sports, from lacrosse to golf to baseball, you name it. They are all over Tomahawk Shades. They've been featured on websites such as GQ, on Wired, on Spy, Guys List, Men's Health, Sports Illustrated, Men's Journal, everywhere. They are the brand to beat in the eyewear industry for small batch shades. Go to TomahawkShades.com, go to the Tomahawk Shades app, and use code USP for 25% off your first order at TomahawkShades.com. Ben, we lead the show off not talking about the President's Cup, even though we will get around to all of that. But finally setting the precedence from the PGA of America, LIV golfers will be eligible for every iteration of the Ryder Cup and PGA Championship to come. A little bit of background here, because I've been getting questions about from non-golf enthusiast friends who are curious, why is it like all of a sudden now that they're mentioning this, they already had the Ryder Cup in Marco Simone last year. Well, apparently there was a loophole in the way that the dues to the PGA of America are listed, and everybody who played for the Ryder Cup that were LIV players, namely only Brooks Koepka in this case because he had qualified, but then also everybody who played for the PGA Championship that was pre-qualified for it, they had already paid their dues for the year because they didn't know whether or not they were going to be banned or not, and therefore now that code is up as of June. So now technically none of them are qualified, and however they have determined that they will now get their own set of rules in order to qualify for Ryder Cups and the PGA Championship. What that is, we don't quite know just yet, but I want to bring this up because I think it really sets a very interesting precedent. We're now finally getting to the point where LIV golfers, even though they're not getting OWGR points, we're still kind of pushing that to the wayside for the most part, even though we know that it's still the main metric utilized in qualifying for majors as well as these big events. It's finally getting us to a point where now we might see the Masters, and we might see the U.S. Open, and we might see the Open in the future, and the organizations that run those events to create a system for LIV golfers to kind of have their own basis points in how to qualify for these events. Otherwise, let's be honest, what is a PGA Championship or a Ryder Cup field without somebody like a Bryson DeChambeau, who this past year had one of the best and most consistent years on not only the major frame, but also just the LIV Golf Tour, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, and the like.
No, I mean, I agree. I think it was a long time coming. Look, I mean, the four majors are they're independently run, right? So the Masters is put on by really the board of Augusta. I mean, it's really in conjunction with I'm sure the USGA and PGA Tour and RNA, DP World Tour. I'm sure they're involved to some degree, but you have to be invited to the Masters.
Yeah.
And obviously there are some qualifications, but LIV, being that they can't have world ranking points, they don't meet those qualifications. It's not possible unless someone jumps ship and then like immediately had such a high world golf ranking that they couldn't drop outside the top 50 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Regardless, that's and then the USGA runs the US Open, the RNA they run the Open, and then the PGA they run the PGA Championship. So I think it was a long time coming. It's the fact that there was a possibility that we could have guys. Now, look, some guys on LIV didn't have to really worry about it, like a Brooks Koepka, like a Dustin Johnson. They didn't really have to worry about it because they do have a good resume when it comes to majors. But there were other guys, such as, I mean, look, I know Patrick Reed has a major, but that's only at Augusta. And so, like, he's one of those guys who, look, he's not the same player he once was. I think you'd agree with me regarding that, but he's one of those guys who was not locked into anything else, really, with the exception of the Masters. And so there were a whole host of guys who didn't have that opportunity. And I think we will be able to get rid of the quote unquote asterisk talk, whatever, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But I think we'll be able, whatever moron said that. Who was that? Who said that?
Taylor Gooch.
Taylor Gooch. That's right. What an idiot.
Fucking bonehead.
He's an idiot. As I'm saying, like, is it asterisk or asterisk? Anyway, so, but regardless, I think all that asterisk talk is going to go to bed now, hopefully. And I hope that the other three majors are able to follow suit with the PGA. I think it's one of those situations where you need the first domino to fall, and the PGA was that. So, but look, at the end of the day, golf is run by a lot of stubborn people and a lot of traditionalists. And those older people don't always like to go against tradition. And if they don't like to go against tradition, they probably aren't a big fan of LIV because it's completely different from how the game of golf has been always played. And so only time will tell. I think if they're smart, which sometimes I question the level of common sense by people who have a high ranking in the game of golf. If they're smart, they will follow suit. And if they're not, then I don't know. The majors might not be as appealing to the casual golf fan, because in a world where you don't have someone like a Dustin Johnson, and look, he has 2 majors, but look, I mean, he won the Masters in 2020, so he's in that for life. He won the U.S. Open at Oakmont 2017, I think it was. And so I believe that's a 10-year exemption, I want to say. And then I don't know how that affects his Open and PGA Championship standing, but like a tournament without Dustin Johnson, like a major without Dustin Johnson playing, just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
There are several other players like a Joaquin Neiman, for example. I mean, look, I know he hasn't won a major, but he's a really talented player. Like, how could that guy not be playing in a major? So I think it'd be very interesting to see what unfolds.
I think it's you brought up the idea that the people wouldn't care about majors. I think like it's all understanding and understood that the majors do mean the most out of anything else. No one cares about particularly or necessarily the Tour Championship or the LIV Individual Championship or the race to Dubai on the DP World Tour. Everyone wants to win a major, and I mentioned this last week on the show. The idea that like Jon Rahm won the individual title on LIV Golf, but no one's going to remember Jon Rahm for what he did for what he did on LIV. They're going to remember him for withdrawing from the U.S. Open and finishing 45th at the Masters and missing the cut at the PGA and having a 5-stroke lead going into 10 at the Olympics and squandering it. Like, no, people aren't going to think, oh, Jon Rahm at LIV Chicago, man, like, great job now. That's simply not how it is. And he even said it after he had won last week. He was like, yeah, it's a different feeling than winning a major, but it's still something that's like nice to have. I think that no matter what, whether or not LIV golfers would be included in majors, and this was obviously the debate 3 years ago, would people still watch it? And at the end of the day, yes, they would, because there's going to be more talent that's going to fill the board up, and that will eventually still make the field as challenging as it usually is, on top of the fact that, of course, you have your guys who have their eligibility. Now, granted, going prior to this agreement, I think 98% of LIV wouldn't have even qualified for half these events. I think Bryson DeChambeau wouldn't have even qualified for most of these events, with the exception of the U.S. Open. So with that being said, it's a huge turnover now, and I'm curious to see, is this going to now push more players? Because now we have the open and honest agreement. Hey, we're going to be able to play the PGA Championship. We're probably going to be able to still play the USGA, the US Open, and the Open once the RNA and the USGA come to a new framework to have different eligibility for LIV. Do you think more guys now jump to LIV and say, you know what, we might be getting an agreement soon. We might end up coming together at some point. Why not get the bag now before it's too late?
I mean, look, there's a possibility, but look, I mean, at this point, LIV needs to either make a pivot or in how they cover the golf and how they cover golf, because it's not good. The product that they're displaying as far as like the quality of like just the coverage is not there. And I think that's universally understood. I have no idea what it's like being on the grounds there. From what I've heard, it's a lot of fun when you're actually at the event, but watching it on TV, I was talking to my dad about it today. He was like, it sucked. He was like, it sucked watching it on TV. It was terrible. And so I think I think the whole, them trying to get these big names, it's only going to take them so far. And so, like, John Rahm is not moving the needle for them. Really, like, the guy who moved the needle for them the most was Anthony Kim. But even that, like, kind of fizzled out, and he was on a 1-year deal worth $7.5 million, supposedly. So, and I love AK. For those of you wondering, he and I had our second exchange ever on Instagram, and it was awesome. So, shout out to Anthony Kim. He's the man. We're basically best friends now. So yeah, I like him more than I like Steven. Anyway,
you gonna bowl him tomorrow? Jesus Christ!
Why would you say that?
Get a room.
Why would you say that? Regardless, the players that they're recruiting are not really moving the needle, and so players, if they do jump ship, they have to understand that they are not going to have the same opportunities in media from that perspective as they would from the PGA Tour. It's just not going to happen. And so I do think that guys would jump to LIV if they are guaranteed an opportunity, or like there's a pathway for them to go and play the 4 majors. You know, whether it's, I don't know, top 5 on the points list by this date, or top 10 on the points list last year, and then top 5 from the points list, you know, at this specific date, this calendar year, whatever it is. I do think there's a possibility, but I do think it's going to be harder for LIV. Number one, it's pretty obvious they do have a budget. They do have a budget for who they're bringing in. And that's why they're able to kind of let go of so many players every single year if they don't perform. Because you can be dropped from your team. You can lose your contract, essentially. Some guys only have 2-year contracts. Some guys have 1. Some guys have 4, allegedly. Some guys have 6-year contracts. So that being said, yes, could this potentially open up an avenue to get bigger names? For sure. But those bigger names, or whoever jumps to LIV next, they have to have an understanding that we're not going to have the same coverage as athletes as we would have from the PGA Tour, unless LIV does something drastically different. Because it's not, and you'd agree, the product on TV ain't it. It's not good. I know they're treated like a royalty, but just watching it, they will never get the same media opportunities, and the players have to understand that.
I think also, and you missed this from last week, there's been new reports that the framework between PGA and the PIF are basically in place. The only caveat is that according to those players that are part of the talks on the PGA side, want LIV golfers to give back all of the money that they've earned. Which brings a whole other issue into it. I don't think it would change anybody from wanting to jump, because at the end of the day, and as I made this comment last week, you and I go to interview for a job. I take it. You say no. I get a big signing bonus. Say, you know what? It's not for me. I come back, and all of a sudden, our boss says, "Oh yeah, no, you got to relinquish your earnings." That's all. It's all bullshit. It's all nonsense. But honestly, I totally do think that guys would end up jumping, because now they have a guaranteed path, and eventually, once we end up coming back together, it's just free money at that point.
Who said that they should give their money back?
Allegedly, there's no names that have been pointed out, but players from the PGA side of the negotiation. Which honestly, if there's one name that probably would make sense, because he's one of the 5 or 6 people that are there, it's Jordan Spieth and it's Patrick Cantlay.
Well, you know, I know we got to jump to the President's Cup, I believe, is next. But regardless, this is exactly why they need a different commissioner, because the players have way too much of a say. I mean, in any other sport, I understand this is kind of unprecedented for any sports league, you know, what has happened. And we've been going with this saga for 2 years now, roughly. they need a much stronger person who is able to manage the room so that the players are not involved. Because this is the only major sports league that I can think of, and I do consider professional golf at the highest level of major sports league, considering they do get a lot of TV time. You would never see that. You would never see players in the NFL having this much of a say. You wouldn't. Okay. You would never see this in hockey. You would never see this in baseball. The only other sport, major sport that you see players having a giant say in things as far as teams and free agency is the NBA. And wouldn't you know it, the NBA's product sucks. So it makes me a little bit queasy that players are so involved and so in these negotiations. This should be between Jay Monahan and whatever advisors he has. Not players on the tour, advisors. Anyone who works for the PGA Tour. And if he can't handle that responsibility, if we are going to have players chirping in his ear, and by the way, I'm sure you're pretty much hitting the nail right on the head. I could totally see Jordan Spieth and Patrick Cantlay saying that. Okay, that is so on brand for them.
Exactly. Two fucking grease balls just want
to. Especially Cantlay. But at the end of the day, it's like there's no reason for the players to be involved in this negotiation. There's absolutely no reason.
Well, so looking back in history, the players were involved actually in the AFL-NFL merger, but like not nearly to the extent of this. But also you got to look at it from the idea that and honestly, the PGA Tour kind of shot themselves in the foot when this all came down because of the idea that under the AFL-NFL merger, the players were signed to teams, and they weren't independent contractors. But now in the PGA sense, they are. So all of a sudden, they have to have their own say because there isn't a union backing them up. So really, it comes down to a advisory board of 5 or 6 guys who Cantlay and Spieth both sit on. Tiger Woods no longer, Rory McIlroy no longer, even though Tiger is involved in the negotiations in his own regard, but because he's a mega entity in himself. They're not being looked at it from a union side where they're looking more unbiased and they go through arbitration, whereas these guys just want what they want, and it's all BS at the end of the day. Again, it's a nonsensical idea and desire to try and close this out. But players should be involved, yes, but to the level that they are, it's obscene. Well, and it's over the top.
I understand what you're saying about the AFL-NFL merger, but that was a completely different time in history. And sports,
it was still a rival league. It was still an offshoot that tried to do better. Policy.
I understand that, but it was a completely different time in history. The amount of money at stake was nothing like what it is now. Football had the popularity of football. Yes, of course it was popular. It was not America's pastime, though. It was really baseball. Yeah. Baseball was the sport back then. And so really, yes, the players did have more, had definitely had quite a large say, but that was, what is 2024? That was over 50 years ago. That's pushing 70 years. Yeah, that's pushing 70 years. It was a completely different world back then. Now you would think with how much Monahan makes and how long he's been at this, he'd be able to just look at the players and just kind of be like, guys, you're not really helping.
Yeah, now I guess
you're gonna make the guys on and it's so stupid. Yeah, we're gonna merge. We're gonna merge. But you guys have to give all your money back. That's so ludicrous. It's unbelievable. And it just shows it's almost like some guys on the PGA Tour are tone deaf.
Naturally.
And I get it, like I said, there are a lot of people who are traditionalists in the game of golf. But sometimes in order to make your company survive or make your company thrive or more successful, you have to move away from tradition because times do change. And this is a serious thing. So, and unfortunately, not as many people are watching. You know, if I were Cantlay or Spieth, I'd be like, yeah, let's merge. You guys keep your money. More people are going to watch again because the casual fan doesn't really care that Jake Knapp wins a tournament. You know, we do, and we've talked about it. We do, you know, but the casual fan doesn't. They'd rather see Jon Rahm win. And that's just more, that's at the end of the day, that's more money in everyone else's pockets anyway on the PGA Tour, because golf is a niche sport. And when you're not even meeting the number of viewers per tournament that you're used to meeting, which isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. I know 2.4 million people or whatever it is sounds like a lot. That's really not that much, okay, in the grand scheme of things. If you can get it up to 4 million because Dustin's back, Brooks is back, Rahm's back, who else? Like, give me, like, you know, whoever, like those other guys are back, that could jump to 4 or 5 million because those guys no one's been able to watch them play, or no one's had the desire to watch them play because the product on LIV isn't very good as far as like the streaming and the actual TV product. So that would just equal more money in the players' pockets. And I don't understand like what is so hard for some of those guys in the PGA Tour to understand. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Yeah, in 2001, viewership for the majors were 9.5, 6.5, 5.5, 4.5, and that was for the calendar of majors. We're now down into the low twos, even for exciting Sunday finishes of the Masters. It's almost embarrassing. We got to keep on pressing through. While LIV golfers are guaranteed a spot in PGA, they're not guaranteed a spot in this year's President's Cup. You will not see a single LIV golfer in the field, whether or not you like it or not. Suck it up, deal with it. But the question on everyone's mind is, as we go into the 16th iteration of the President's Cup, it's been around since the 80s. Team USA is 14-1-1 in the history of this event. Ludicrous. Oh my God. I'm coughing a storm because it's crazy.
I'm not laughing about the record. I'm laughing that Steven can't put a sentence together, but continue.
14-1-1 in the history of the history of this event. Alan Shipnuck the other day was talking to Jim Furyk. Furyk hosted a barbecue out in Napa for all the players prior to the Pro Tour Championship, and he was talking to him, and he had mentioned he was like, "Don't hate me, but I hope you guys lose." And he goes, "Well, that's kind of offensive. Like, you're an American. Like, how are you saying that?" And he goes, "Well, first of all, I'm a journalist, so I'm unbiased. And B," he said, "I don't think you would disagree in the idea that you guys, being the USA, winning every single year takes away from the hype of the event. And that if the international team wins, it'll actually reinvigorate a possible rivalry that hasn't been around in almost 10 years. Being that when the international team won, it was almost 10 years ago. God, I can't even speak right now. I apologize." To which Furyk answered back. He had told a story about how him and Steve Stricker were working the 2017 President's Cup at Liberty National, and someone gave him like a half-hearted, like, "Oh, good luck," because being that it was obvious the U.S. was going to dominate. And he said, "No, you should know better to tell me something backhanded like that. So it isn't like I'm killing you right now, but fuck you, go fuck yourself. You can quote me on that." He re-quoted that story to Alan Shipnuck. Basically, in summation, does this event lack the necessary hype that we should be looking at, and therefore the interest this week is kind of minimal?
Okay, I just want to apologize because that story, because of your coughing, was so all over the place.
I'm sorry. I'm having like an allergy attack right now.
Basically, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it. This Alan Shipnuck said, he's like, "I hope you guys lose."
Reiterate it. I've already told it.
I'm just making sure I'm understanding it. Okay, so you just drink your water and just nod your head. Okay, just left foot, right foot, Steve. Okay, stay conscious. Okay,
relax.
Anyway, okay, great. So basically, Alan Shipnuck's like, "Jim, I hope you guys lose because no one cares about this event, and everyone knows you're going to win." And Jim Furyk is like, "Well, it actually means a lot to us," and blah 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 blah. but because of the record, the popular belief is that it lacks the hype because it's 14-1. Okay, cool. So essentially, do I believe it lacks hype? Absolutely. Okay. And it's because of the record, 14-1-1. Now, look, has the international team had some chances in recent memory? Yes, they have. Okay. I believe maybe 2 President's Cups ago, it came down to like a chip, basically, or it really came down to like the final hole. And then last year, the last time this was played, everyone knew it was just it was going to be over pretty quickly. It was still entertaining. Tom Kim was awesome.
Good run.
Stud. I mean, really, like we were like, wow, like this guy's like, we know this guy's like really good, but like this guy's like fun to watch. Yeah, I do think it lacks a lot of hype because I think every single year people sit there, and when you compare it to the Ryder Cup, it's much more of an unknown, especially because since really 2000, Europe has dominated the U.S. overall in total Ryder Cup wins, and it's the complete opposite in the President's Cup, whereas the U.S. dominates the international team clearly. So I do think that having parity in sports is always a good thing. I think it's always good to have uncertainty as to who's going to win championships. And right now, everyone just assumes that the U.S. is going to just be a shoo-in for this, for a win. That being said, it's not the player's fault. It's really up to the international team to change that, because until the international team starts winning or just puts more doubt into the U.S. players' heads. I mean, look, if in the next 3 President's Cups, there's a difference of a point or a half a point or whatever, like it comes down to like the final hole, that will make it so much more interesting, even if the U.S. wins. But this is really up to the international team because they're the ones that are getting absolutely smoked in this event pretty much every single year that they play. So, I mean, I think it's stupid that Alan Shipnut sat there and said, I hope you guys lose. I don't know why you'd ever say that to somebody. I mean, I understand like he needs something to write about, and it's hard to write a story about the team that keeps winning. But at the end of the day, this is up to the international team, and they need to set the precedent for themselves, which is becoming, which is creating. I know it's golf, so it's not much of a team sport, but like creating that winning culture, that expectation of like, yeah, like we're here to win, And I don't know. I'm not going to act like I'm Brandel Chambly and be like, I know what's going on in that room because I'm not in that room, but we all know who's probably going to win. And it's up to the international team to change our perception. It is.
I totally agree with you. And I think, and what people forget is we look back on the history of the Ryder Cup. There's been almost 45, 46 Ryder Cups. The USA won 22 of the first 26. Like from the jump, this started back in the 20s. Great Britain, up until the 80s, had only won in 1929, 1933, 1957, and 19. That was it, 3 times. They had only won 3 times. 24 and 3 in the first 27 iterations of this event. Also, it wasn't until it became the turn of the 80s, the 1979 Ryder Cup, that the R&A was like, yo, like we've been getting absolutely dominated by the US. We should expand out of just Great Britain and Ireland. And then they finally included continental Europe, and they managed to get on guys like Seve Ballesteros, and they actually got talent from across continental Europe. And finally, in 1985, they actually won, which by the way, that team was absolutely stacked. They went from a team that lacked the overall talent to adding Ballesteros. They added Canizares. They added Bernard Langer. These are some really big-time names that managed to get them to a spot that they could finally compete with the Nicklases and the Palmers of the world. And now it's become the Team Europe show. They've won, I think, of the last 10 iterations, they've won, I think, 7. So at the end of the day, like, yeah, of course, it's on the international team, but I think the fact that they axed continental Europe from of course, it happened 30 years before the President's Cup started, it kind of screwed over the international side, and the international team is getting better and better every single year. We said it 2 years ago. Losing guys to LIV was going to absolutely diminish the quality of the team. When they played back in 2022, they still had Sebastian Munoz. They had on Louis Oosthuizen. Those guys are now gone. But with that, they've also brought on some insanely talented players. Siwoo Kim is going to play his second President's Cup. Last year, he led the team in points. Cameron Davis is going to make his second event. He had 2 points. Tom Kim, 2 points. Ben On's back after a hiatus. He's been statistically one of the best international team players. But they're getting a ton of talent. And with that being said, being in Canada, Corey Connors, Nick Taylor, Mackenzie Hughes, Corey Connors has been the only staple on this team forever. They're finally getting more talent. So I think this is a turning point, and there are more players that are going to come from around the world that are going to help this team out. But I think it's also a matter of it's early on in history still. It's almost still in the infancy. We're only at the 16th President's Cup. Wait until we get to the 30s where we can finally see, okay, we're finally getting the international team more respect and love. The Ryder Cup's only gotten to this level as of the last 25 years because it's now become so evenly matched on both sides. For the most part, and I was talking to an older gentleman at where was I a couple weeks ago at a golf course in Mass at Pine Hills, and he was like, yeah, like I've been watching the Ryder Cup for 80 years. It wasn't really entertaining until the 70s. So that's really that is the story for you. And I think once the international side can get a little bit more talent, and there's a lot more coming up, they'll be able to do a lot more damage. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, we'll go through the entire President's Cup field, the course, the history, everything you need to know going into the 16th President's Cup at Royal Montreal up in Canada. The USA 14-1-1, can they claim a 15th title, or can Team International claim their second victory in their history? Don't go anywhere. Ben and Steve right here for Getting the Hole. Welcome back into Getting the Hole with Ben and Steve here. Want to give you a little shout out to our friends over at Acorn Hills. Got to talk a little bit about what they've got going on up the pike. Of course, their end of summer sale happening right now. The beginning of fall. It's the perfect time as the leaves turn fun autumn colors, and we get more and more into the fall swing of golf. Looking forward to the winter. That you need to get your hands on some awesome apparel over at Acorn Hills. They've been featured on the National Weather Service. They're well known for changing clothing through conservation. For every $1 you give, the National Forest Foundation will plant a seedling to promote forestation growth across the country. And Acorn Hills is there to bring you the stylish apparel for on and off the golf course, all using biodegradable packaging and plantable clothing tags. Use code GITH15 for 15% off your next order at acornhills.co and look your best from the ground up. I also want to give a shout to our boys over at eBay. We have 1 week left with our new partners at eBay for their 40% off refurb program. You can get anything from polos to rangefinders, golf bags, which literally got a brand new one just the other day from Stitch. You can get rangefinders, polos, Q-zips, whatever you're looking for the golf course, plus also some really cool iron sets for anywhere from $500 to $1,000. 40% off eBay refurb. Use the link in our description here to save with eBay, the new force in golf apparel and equipment. Now through October 1, this is the last week that you can get in on this action. They might not be here for a while, so go check them out. All right, Ben, let's get into the mega preview of the President's Cup this year. We start off with a little bit of talk on the golf course we're dealing with. Royal Montreal hosted the President's Cup back in 2017. Team USA won back then 19.5 to 14.5, playing 7,300 yards, a par 70 this week. Not like what you usually see out in Canada. It's a little bit similar to what they played at the RBC Canadian Open the last couple of years, but very tree lined, slightly narrows off at certain areas of the golf course. A couple of stats that I want to get into before we talk about the field. Accuracy off the tee this week is going to be absolutely paramount. Again, very tree lined, narrows out a lot of those tee boxes and a lot of those fairways. So you will see guys clubbing down in order to get a favorable spot in the fairway. With that being said, also ball striking is going to be absolutely crucial. You're going to see a lot of middle iron play, anywhere from like 180 to like 210 yards on approach. So to be able to have strong ball striking from that distance, plus it correlates quite well into the final part, which, Ben, as you know, in match play, the one thing that everyone cares about the most is putting. You make less putts than the other guy, you win the hole. One of the most crucial stats in President's Cups and Ryder Cups history is the team that wins Ryder Cups and President's Cups win by a strokes gain margin of 3 or more. Proximity and strong putting is going to be huge, which carries into your ball striking. Hit it close, nail your putt, and get on with it. The undulations here are not incredibly difficult. They will be very playable. Bent grass greens throughout the golf course on a nice, brisk fall afternoon. It'll be a little bit chilly, so the ball won't travel that far, but certainly gives you a lot of opportunity in order to make some low scores. Ben, the field this week, as I had mentioned, we don't have any LIV golfers as they aren't allowed in the field. But I want to get your take here on going into this event. 2 years ago, when the President's Cup happened, basically nobody on the international side was in the best of form, and yet Team USA had Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa and Bryson DeChambeau and Max Homa, who were in tremendous form going into it. Do you see a difference in this international team, and how much of a force can they be going into this week, as a lot of these players have gotten older, more mature, and a lot more skilled in their game?
I do definitely think there is a chance for potential upset in just the overall match at the end of the President's Cup. I think you'd be pretty naive to say that there's no chance. I definitely do think there is a chance. And I think the reason for that, because of so many players defecting to LIV, most of the guys in the last iteration of this event were just unknowns for the most part. And now, I mean, look, I pulled up the roster for both teams. I mean, look, Hideki, obviously very good, had a good finish at the end of the year. Sungjae Im has become really a mainstay on the PGA Tour. He's done a fantastic job. He's seems to be always in good form now every single year. He's just been a mainstay. Adam Scott, he's really the veteran in the room. He's played every single year since he's been on tour. He's played every single President's Cup. And so really that's like their big three. And then you look past that, Tom Kim, who had a really nice first showing in – sorry, my phone is like blowing up and I'm trying to like look at two different screens.
Yeah, you're good.
Tom Kim, who had a really, really nice first President's Cup 2 years ago. Jason Day, he's had a return to form, I guess you could say. I mean, really, some of us, including me, kind of thought he was treading water in his career. Maybe a little bit on the downturn. I don't know if you agree with me, but there was a point in time where it was like, geez, like he's always hurt. He hasn't had that many memorable finishes, but he and Chris Como have done a very good job together. So hats off for Jason Day for figuring it out because he's resurrected his career. Byung-Hung An coming off the suspension, which was crap. It was really not fair, I think, for him. He really did a great job in a very short amount of time this year. I mean, think about that. I mean, you lose that many months and you have the year that he had. That's pretty darn impressive. And then you have guys like Christian Bezatin, Corey Connors, Mackenzie Hughes, Siwoo Kim, who's played on I believe a couple President's Cups, Taylor Pendrith and Minwoo Lee. Those are really the two unknowns. But when I read that roster to you, Steve, we mostly know what those guys are capable of. And they're that is a much more familiar looking roster compared to what we saw 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So absolutely. That's why I say there is a chance for an upset, because look, we already know these guys are really good. They play on tour for a reason, but that roster stacks up much better compared to the roster that they rolled out 2 years ago. And I think most people would agree with that.
And 2 years ago, not to mention, you look at that team, four second-time players and 8 rookies. And amongst those rookies, Christian Bezatin, Cam Davis, Tom Kim, Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith, they're back again. They understand what the stage is like. They're ready for the competition. And yes, 2 years ago, they had KH Lee. They had Sebastian Munoz. They did have Mito Pereira, who was a rookie. They also had Joaquin Niemann last year. At the same time, now you bring on a new cast of guys who arguably to this point in their careers was Joaquin Niemann the best player in the world in 2022? Was Mito Pereira the best player in the world, with the exception of his one really good play at the PGA? I would honestly take amongst the newer guys, Minwoo Lee. I take Mac Hughes. Bezatin, who's had an incredible season. We don't talk about him nearly enough. Taylor Pendrith played really well. Of course, Ben On with a resurgent year. And then when you're led, and again, this is an unsung hero almost. Adam Scott, Hideki Matsuyama, and Sanjay Im, and then also Jason Day are 4 really talented leaders of this team. And they don't get enough respect because while Matsuyama is he's 32 years old, he's won, of course, a couple majors, but there seems to be times where when he wins, it's kind of on the faults of everybody else, and he manages to get up late. Doesn't seem to be able to blow away crowds. He does it very under the radar. Adam Scott, we talk more about his bad putting stroke with the broomstick more than anything else as of late, but yet the last 3 months of the season was tremendous. Jason Day, ever since switching to Melbourne, has all of a sudden become a new mainstay on tour. And Sanjay Im, his biggest flaw for the last 3 years has been he makes as many bogeys as he makes birdies. And yet he's finally turned it around. Now here he is on the main stage. 2 years ago, we don't talk about it enough either. The team that they had, they simply didn't put up enough points when they could have capitalized. Corey Connors went over 4. Taylor Pendrith went over 4. I'm trying to pull up the actual point records that we have here from 2 years ago. Here we go. So 2 years ago, you look at the overall scoring. Mito Pereira, Siwoo Kim went 3-1. Otherwise, no one had a winning record. Tom Kim had 2 wins, one in the foursome, one in the 4-ball. They all lost in singles. The only wins in singles last year was Bezatin, Sebastian Munoz, KH Lee, and Sanjay Im. They simply didn't put up enough points in the areas that they should have capitalized, where they just simply flummoxed. Adam Scott lost 3 matches. He lost each of them by only 1 stroke. Tom Kim lost a very important match to Scotty Scheffler, but lost it by only 1 point. So when you look at it from that end, if they can just match up correctly against this USA team, I think they more than have a great shot to play very well. Do I think they'll give them a fight? Yeah. Do I think they're going to win? Don't think they're there quite yet. However, I do think in 2 more years, there's going to be a huge boost to this team going forward. I want to get into guys whose stock is rising, stock's trending down, who's going to make an impact or might actually deteriorate their teams. Give me a name from each side who you think can really make an impact, whether it be from the top of the list to the bottom of the list, from each side, and somebody who can do a really poor job and deteriorate this team to possibly a loss by the end of the week.
Okay, look, so I think the international team, there's one big name. It's Tom Kim. He's really going to be the catalyst for them. I really do believe that he could make a a massive positive impact on that team. I mean, he played with a lot of guts 2 years ago. He really stole the show in what was really a very forgettable President's Cup. He's really the only memory that I have.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd agree with me too. The passion, the energy, we saw that even in the Olympics, we saw it with him. And so I really think he could have a huge impact, not just by him winning matches. I mean, if you said to me, yeah, he just went 4-0 this week, I genuinely would not be surprised because number one, I think he's that good. Number two, I think these are the moments that he lives for, as evidenced by last President's Cup, the Olympics, and just the opportunity to represent a team. That being said, from the U.S. side, I think someone who's kind of flying under the radar, Sahith Theegala. And, he had a very interesting quote at the most recent PGA Tour event, which was I think he said something, he's like addicted to playing tournaments. I think he said something like that. You just love hearing that from someone because that just shows the guy is a true competitor. And that's something that you want. That's someone you want in your team when it could be pretty easy for the U.S. team to be like, yeah, we're going to smoke these guys because that's just like kind of what we do in this. Having someone like that in the room who's just such a competitor every single day and who just genuinely wants to play and wants to win, I think that could definitely help steer the U.S. in the right direction for sure. Now, look, as far as guys who are trending down, so to speak, Max Homa is definitely the guy, I think, on the U.S. team. I don't think he deserves to be on the team, if I'm being completely honest. He or Brian Harman, I think, had a better year. Max just had such a weird year. I thought it was such a head-scratching move to make him one of the captain's picks. And then really, I'd honestly, like, Min-Woo Lee had a very disappointing year on the PGA Tour. And so I think he's kind of, I don't know if he's plateauing right now, but I almost feel like he's kind of hit a wall. And so I definitely could see him, for as talented as he is, I could definitely see him perhaps having a tough week in his first President's Cup. I could.
So for me, stop trending upward. I'm going to rely heavily on the captain's picks here because I think both sides are really strong, and we're not talking enough about how good some of the captain's picks are. I'm not going to say all of them. But Russell Henley is a name that, as a rookie going into this, has not played in a Ryder Cup, is finally getting his first crack at things. Another guy who just loves to play in tournaments. But he has the perfect skill set for this golf course. He's a middle iron player. He doesn't hit the ball incredibly far, but he hits it straight, which is what you want on a golf course like this. Honestly, like he's been so heavily under the radar to the point that if you look at like top rookie scorers, there are names above him. He's the last person on the odds board where Brian Harman is ahead of him. What has Brian Harman done this year in order to instill trust in me to say, all right, yeah, like he's going to be a top scoring rookie for this team? I love Russell Henley here in this spot. I also want to give a highlight to not only Siwoo Kim, but also Hideki Matsuyama. And Siwoo Kim obviously being a captain's pick is a huge boost because considering he led the team last year in points, but also Hideki Matsuyama has, like, we don't give him enough appreciation and enough encouragement for how good he's played just over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Finished top 10 in the Tour Championship. He won at the FedEx St. Jude. He finished T3 at the Olympics. Like, he played at golf courses similar to this one and played incredibly well. He's easily the most feared player for the international team coming into this. He's one of the best players in this field amongst the Colin Morikawas and the Xander Schauffele's, but we just simply don't acknowledge it enough. And again, like I said, Siwoo led the team in points last year, will be a driving force as honestly one of the most consistent players in golf. Again, underappreciated star. in this game and one of the better Korean players that we have in the sport. For trending downward, there's two names that stand out the most. I mean, one person who I did not think deserved a spot on this roster, even though he made it on automatic qualifying, is Wyndham Clark. He's been absolutely booty the last 3 months, and it just simply hasn't given me any sort of interest. His first time playing in a major tournament like this was the Ryder Cup, and he went 1-1-1. The whole reason why he halved was because Max Homa went 4-0 on the week and was absolutely a stunner and carried him the whole way. And when they won one up because Patrick Cantlay carried him in that grouping with the hat off with fucking bones. So everyone's like, all right, here we go. So, sorry, with the Kava. And then he lost to Bobby Max 16 to 11. I'm sorry, the point total was 16 to 11. He lost by 6 strokes. Like, he got dominated by the last ranked player on the European side, who no one thought was going to do that. And Wyndham Clark last year was, again, a U.S. Open champion. So I don't like Wyndham Clark going into this. For that matter, also don't like Brian Harmon. I wish Akshay Bhatia was in this field. I wish JT was in this field. And then Minwoo Lee. Minwoo Lee did exactly what Jordan Spieth did this past year, but only with less talking about it because Minwoo Lee. He played so well in Australia on the DP World Tour in November that everyone thought going into the year he was going to be an absolute monster. And he finished 60th in the points. He fizzled out in the playoffs and just simply didn't give the people what he had hoped to achieve in his rookie year. He now goes in to a rookie campaign for the President's Cup, and I just don't think he's going to be able – he's not going to be a guy to give you 4 points. He might give you 2, but for someone who has the expectations of 4 points, to give you only half that is not going to be sufficient for an international team. They're going to need him to pull something out of the hat and play significantly better than what he did on tour this year in order to make an impact. Let's get into the good stuff, the fun stuff. Who's going to actually win this damn thing, as we're already in hour 16 and want to get us out the door. It's time for Beer Money, brought to you by Kenwood Beer. My favorite beer, your favorite beer, our favorite beer, America's favorite beer. Who's Kenny? He's smooth, he's clean, he's bright with a taste of boot. He's the routine choice of folks on a balanced, flavorful, no-frills beer that's right for any occasion. He's only 120 calories, 8 grams of carbs. He's better than Kenny Gainwell on the gridiron. He will score, score, and score. You can find him anywhere in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and now Delaware, and at the Wells Fargo Center and beyond as basketball and hockey season gets underway in just a month. Go to Kenwood Beer. Use that Kenny tracker. Must be 21 years or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. We start off with our predictions for the top American scorer in the President's Cup. Who will lead the United States of America this week?
Oh, you're going first because I always go first. So,
oh, sure. So I'm gonna ride with someone who I mentioned earlier in the program and has been a catalyst for this for multiple President's Cup and Ryder Cup teams in years past, and ironically was like the face of controversy last year. Patrick Cantlay scored 3.5 points in 2021 at the Ryder Cup. He had 3 points last 2 years ago in the President's Cup. Last year he had 2 points in the Ryder Cup, and again carried Wyndham Clark to a big win over Fleetwood and McAvoy. I love Patrick Cantlay in a spot where he's going to get matched up again, probably with Colin, and they will likely dominate. It's the same kind of story when Colin was with Dustin Johnson and they went undefeated at Whistling Straits. This is going to be a perfect spot for Cantlay to really dominate for the U.S. side, and it's probably the sleeper agent amongst everybody. Everyone's going to talk about Scottie Scheffler and Xander Schauffele. We got to give enough respect to the guy who's third in Ryder Cup points in the last 5 years.
That's I think that's a good pick, and I understand what you're saying for sure. I definitely do think he has a lot to prove based on how he acted like such a child at last year's Ryder Cup. So, I mean, I could definitely see him really being motivated just to shut everybody up because that's really all we remember from the U.S. side is just the fighting, and he was really like at the source of it. Regardless, I'm going to go with Xander Schauffele, okay? And my reasoning, for me, it was between Xander and Scotty, and I just feel like it's such a toss-up. just because now we're in a match play setting. And so things are a little bit different. Obviously, yes, like, Scotty's all the way up here and everyone else is like kind of down here. And then there's just tiers. And we've openly acknowledged like Xander is really like that first tier below Scotty. But that being said, for parity's sake, I'm going to go with Xander here. I just think his overall game, he doesn't really have any weaknesses and he rarely makes mistakes. And the reason why that's so important in match play, when you play against someone who doesn't make mistakes, or if you're in a team format in match play and you have a partner who doesn't make mistakes, that can actually infuriate the person or the people that you're playing against. And for me, that's why someone like him, it's almost like and I was almost thinking about Colin Morikawa for this spot as well, but I went with Xander because I just think he's a little more talented than Colin. And so, especially like physically, like ball striking, hits it further. I think he hits it a little bit better. But you're looking for guys who don't make a lot of mistakes. And I will say the one bugaboo that I know, great word.
Clip that shit.
So good.
Bugaboo.
The one bugaboo issue I have with Scotty is that he does actually make mistakes. Now, in a stroke play format, he's so good that he can just overcome them. But match play, it's a little bit different, okay? And it's such a momentum thing that you don't want to give your opponent the momentum by you making a stupid double. And so that's why I went with Xander there.
Bugaboo.
Shut up. That's all you got out of that. That's all you got out of that. That was a great rant.
No, that's a tremendous rant, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Top international this week. It's one of three names for me. I'm going to go with Sanjay M, though. He's the most underrated player amongst the top three on this roster between Matsuyama, Scott, and M. He has a 66% winning percentage in President's Cups. He's still only 24 years old. Like, he's still a young quality player. Sorry, 26 years old. He's a young, strong, smart player. He's 5-3-2 in his career. He's played here twice. He's really strong in the way he's able to approach the game of golf, but also make less mistakes in a match play setting than he does on the PGA Tour. His scoring averages in match play settings are way higher than what you see on tour averages. So I love Sanjay M here at plus 500 to lead the international side in points.
Okay, so someone who I'm going to go with, I think he's a guy who has really revitalized his career. He's really revived his career over the last couple of years. I'm going to go with Adam Scott. And my reasoning is he understands that he's the veteran in the room. Okay. And look, they have Mike Weir as the captain. I personally don't know any other person who could better represent this President's Cup for the international side than Mike Weir. Not that I don't know him personally. My dad actually met him a long time ago. Beat him in a closest to the pin at Hudson National way back when. Oh yeah, right before he won the Masters too. So yeah, I know, so fun. I have the golf ball actually that he signed the golf ball. But anyway, so that being said, I think Adam Scott is the adult in the room. And he came out with a quote, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because I don't know I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said he's like 2-2 is not going to get it done by me this week, And so the guy, as you eloquently said a couple weeks ago about something else, but you used the phrase big stick. Adam Scott is carrying a big stick this week, and he knows that he needs to go out there and not just be a leader in the locker room, but also on the golf course. And he knows his play needs to show. And I think being that he is definitely on the back end of his career, even though he's kind of revived his career, as I said, I think this is a very motivated Adam Scott. And I think he knows that. And you don't just say 2-2 is not going to get it done. You're insinuating you want to go 4-0. And will that happen? That's really hard to do. It's rare that you ever see that in a Ryder Cup or President's Cup, but he certainly has the game to do it. So I'm going to go off of hype, leadership, and name alone, Adam Scott.
I thought a lot. We move on to our top rookies, and I had made this mention earlier in the program, a guy whose stock's trending up for Team USA. I don't know and again, as it pertains to odds, how Russell Henley can be plus 850 behind Brian Harman and behind Mac Hughes and behind Minwoo Lee. This guy is an absolute gamer. Do you know that? Listen to this. This is one of the greatest stats that I've heard as to why Russell Henley is going to dominate this week. The last time Russell Henley lost strokes on his approach and ball striking, do you know when that was?
Oh, God. Can you give me a month?
March.
March. Arnold Palmer?
At the Players, so the week after.
Damn.
This guy hasn't lost strokes in almost 9 months. How that, Scotty Scheffler even lost strokes more recently than him, and he had 7 wins. Russell Henley is an absolute gamer and is a monster on this golf course. He's going to hit it in the right spots. He'll find the greens, and particularly when he's playing in those four-ball foursomes, he's going to be able to dominate with a partner who's going to be by his side and able to help him out and support him on the greens, where he at times in his career has lacked. Russell Henley is going to be a monster for this team. And honestly, if they win big, if they win by 5, 6, 7 points, it's going to be because of a three-point week from Russell Henley.
I think that's a great point. I mean, if the odds are like that, though, that almost tells me that Vegas knows something that we don't know. Who I just call these odds makers Vegas at this point, because I don't know. Do they know something that we don't know? I think that's a fair question. But I mean, I agree with your reasoning there. I'm going to go with more of a safer pick, Theegala. And I know I talked about him before, but look, this is a guy that loves to compete. He's a competitor, and I think this is the type of guy that you need in a room. I could definitely see him, even though he is a rookie, correct? In this, no. Yes, okay. Even though he is a rookie, a guy like that is the type of guy who ends up becoming a leader in the locker room. And I do know, I understand this is the President's Cup and not last year's Ryder Cup, but there was no leadership at all. And I know with Jim Furyk at the helm, there's going to be leadership. He showed that in his interview with Alan Shipnuck. But as far as the players go, Theegala is going to be right up there. You want someone who really wants to compete, who loves to win, who loves to have it, regardless of the situation, whether he's up 6 holes or down 6 holes. You know he's going to give every single shot. Nothing's going to be handed to he's not going to hand anything to his opponent. So that's why I really think Sahith Theegala could have a really big week from when you look at all the rookies.
I can't wait for Sahith Theegala to finally make a Ryder Cup and absolutely show it's just his dominance. Or
win a major, I mean, I could totally see it. So good.
Things will all happen much sooner than you think. We move on. Our second to last category, the captain's picks this week. Each team's got 6. Who will be the top captain's pick from either nation? In looking at these numbers, I mean, I'm so inclined to roll with Russell Henley, but the international captain's picks seem way more intriguing than the U.S. side, and I'm not saying that because I didn't want 2 of these guys in the field, but Sam Burns does not have a good track record playing in President's Cups. Tony Finau is middle of the road, but he's more of a Ryder Cup standout than he has been in the President's Cup. Keegan Bradley, while he hasn't been on a President's Cup roster in quite some time, he's only 2-2-1. And while Max Homa went 4-0, and while he has an incredible track record in these match play settings, he had 3 points last year at the Ryder Cup. He went 4-0 2 years ago in his rookie campaign. That was a very different Max Homa. So I'm going to ride with the international side. And while it is a home game for Corey Connors, I love Siwoo Kim going into this. Coming into a rookie campaign where he had no expectations of himself, had just mastered the ability to finally finish top 20 consistently on tour at his age 27 season. Siwoo Kim went in, got 3 points, led the international side against a very fierce American team. I think he will repeat that and be a force for this team going forward. So I'll take Siwoo Kim at a pretty good odds number right next to Corey Connors. I think he's plus 850 alongside Connors is 800.
That's a good point. He's been a mainstay in the President's Cup for quite some time, and I think he's, it's crazy to think that he's a captain's pick. I think that shows the depth that they have now as compared to 2 years ago. That being said, I'm going with someone who's really I keep picking these guys, some guys who just like have revived their career, like with the Adam Scott, pick, and I'm going with Keegan Bradley. I genuinely believe, though, that his career has been rejuvenated since he was selected as captain for next year's Ryder Cup. I genuinely believe that. I just, in my mind, I see he has just like this signature fist pump. He plays with a lot of heart, a lot of pride. And I just, as for a captain's pick, I find it always interesting when you see a veteran on the PGA Tour who's a captain's pick. I don't know. It's just you'd almost think that it would be like more rookies or guys who haven't been there that long. He's been on tour for a long time, since 2011. So this was his 13th year on tour. Okay, and I could totally see him being the top captain's pick. I mean, he lives for the moment. He's intense. He's the type of guy that feeds off that energy, and he wants to make his own Ryder Cup team. That is a real goal of his, and so I could totally see him having a great week. Before we get into the winner, Steve, of days 1 and 2, it's a 4-day event. Do we want to add in who's going to win day 3 as well?
The odds, odds boards don't show day 3 because I think it's they split the schedule, I believe, on day 3. I think it's, instead of it being just foursomes and just 4-ball, I think it's a mix.
Yeah, it's 8 matches total, 4-ball and foursome split in the morning and afternoon. Okay.
So I think that's why they want to keep it even. I mean, we can do a day 3. I don't think our picks are going to change very much. But
I will say, let's do a day 3.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Why don't we it's 4 days. For the sake of it, we'll do the 4 days and then we'll just do the total. And I understand probably like nothing's going to change, but I might be, more inclined to maybe say like, the international team does win a day. If you get 4 cracks at it instead of 2, I just think for parity purposes, I'm just speaking logically. You don't need to laugh. You don't need to laugh. I think it's a good idea. But
sure, why not? Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Just go in order your picks for each singular day, and then give me your final winner and the overall prediction. I'll let you lead it.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just type these in.
It's crazy thinking about picking the individual days because we don't know what to expect in terms of team matchups.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
At the same time, though, it's like I don't think that you can stray away from just taking the USA all 4 days.
See, but the thing is, here's the thing. In sports in general, it is if one more person texts me tonight, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to extend my do not disturb for 24 hours now. In sports in general, when you have 3 games, it is really hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. True. And so the fact that they have 4 cracks at it, I just think there's got to be a day where there's a shakeup. I really do believe, and I'm sure you and I are on the same, are on board, are on the same wavelength as who's going to win overall and who's going to pretty much dominate. But that being said, I genuinely think that So regardless, all right. So do you want me to just give you days 1 through 4 and then total, and then you give
Yeah.
me okay.
Yeah, hey, give me it all.
All right. So for day 1, I'm going with USA. Day 2, I'm going with USA. Day 3, I'm going to go with the international squad. I do think that I do think that they make a little bit of a push for sure, because I do feel that they will be playing catch up. I think that that's a real thing. They could be playing with a little more desperation. But that being said, once you play with desperation and all that intensity, it's very easy to be, especially when you're in an environment like that where it's high pressure and there's a lot of emotion. It's very easy to get tired, especially as the home team, especially when you have a lot of pressure because you've only won one of these. Okay, that's a real thing. And so that's why for day 4, I'm going to go with USA. And my final score prediction, I'm going to go with 17-13. I think it's going to be a little closer than most people think. But so I'm going USA, International, USA, and then USA winning it all at 17-13.
Okay,
So for those of you wondering, there's 30 matches in total. That's how it works.
So interestingly enough, in 2022, the only day or the only spot where the international team won the day was Saturday's matches. They knotted up 2-2 in the morning foursome and went 3-1 in the afternoon fourball. Now, the teams were very different. It's really funny. Like, I'm going to read these teams to you and you're going to laugh. So when they won the afternoon fourball, Siwoo Kim and Tom Kim beat Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele 1-up. Matsuyama and Pendrith beat Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth 4-3. Sanjay Im and Sebastian Munoz beat Tony Finau and Kevin Kisner 3-2. And Adam Scott and Ken Davis went 1-up on Horschel and Burns. These teams are going to be totally different. However, it's very apparent that in the fourball, the international side is much more talented. So I'm actually going to follow suit with you. I'm going to go USA, International, USA, because I think if anything, you're right. It's incredibly hard to beat a team three times in a row, and we see it. And I mention it all the time when I bet on the NCAA tournament. It's impossible to do. I don't think it'll be very close. But at the end of the day, they might win by 1 point if they knot up one end. With that being said, my final score prediction, I do think that the USA is going to run away with it. I only think that the international side is going to put up 12 points. I think a lot of that's going to be incorporated to only 3 names. It's going to be a lot of Matsuyama, a lot of Sanjay Im, and a lot of Siwoo Kim. You might see a little bit of Tom Kim too, but I just think they're going to put Tom Kim in high leverage situations that I don't think he's going to be able to match against some guys in some regards. I'm going to go 18-12. The USA wins. A lot of zeros are going to come from Minwoo Lee and from Cameron Davis and Nick Taylor, and it's not going to end well for the international side. The USA will win once again. Any final thoughts before we get going?
No, that's it. The Phillies just won the NL East. Congratulations. The A's are – did you see that thing about the A's, how they're telling the players to basically just get the hell out once the game is over, to get off the field?
Why? Because like riots?
They're worried about fans, I guess, storming the field. Like,
probably, yeah.
Meanwhile, if you just have proper security, that's not going to happen. So I think, first of all, I think Major League Baseball and the A's have gone about that situation the total wrong way, especially because now they're playing at a AAA ballpark next year. I think that's so sad. Like, those fans should be – the players – I think the players and the coaching staff, they want to thank all the fans that are going to go out, because it sounds like it's going to be a sellout crowd and they're not going to get the opportunity to do that. Like, what a terrible way to end a time in a city that really, when you look at Oakland, they don't have a whole lot to cheer for. They really don't. They've lost they're now losing their 3rd sports team, and they have some serious economic hardships, and that's how they're going out. That's pretty I don't know. I think that's pretty shitty. But
I mean, hey, you know what? They've managed to do better than some teams, including finally, Ben, for the first time in our history, as of tomorrow, we will experience it. The Chicago White Sox are playing the Anaheim Angels, two of the worst teams in the American League. The White Sox lose. They will break the 1962 New York Mets record for the worst record in baseball history. They will earn their 121st loss of the season.
I'm going to just say one thing.
Miraculous.
I really believe the fact that people I feel like that's something that gets thrown around a lot, that since 1962, the Mets had the most losses in a season in 1962. That was their first year in existence. They were basically an expansion team. And that's pretty fucking common, especially in that day and age when an expansion team didn't perform well. And I just think it's people just adding salt to the wound because it's the New York Mets and they're really known for their fuck ups and failures more than their successes and triumphs. But overall, the White Sox are garbage. I mean, that stadium is, while it looks cool, you can tell it needs to go. And now they're talking about how they're going to they might move to Nashville. Give me a break. Honestly, some of these owners are just the White Sox should be playing in one city and one city only. It's Chicago. Okay. They have a jersey that says South Side on it. They should be playing in South Side. It's just, and it's the A's. The A's should be playing in one city. Oakland. That's what they're known for. It's just let's be honest. Could you imagine being a part of that team and not even knowing where you're going to be playing next year? You're a trainer for the A's and you're yeah, honey, you look at your wife honey, I don't know where we're going to be living next year. And it's September 23rd. I have no clue if we're going to be, because now they're even talking about potentially staying in Oakland. I saw a report come out that they actually might end up being in Oakland again because they're not 100%. No, because they're not 100% sure about Sacramento, and obviously they don't have a place to play in Las Vegas. So
I mean, they do if they end up playing where the 51s play, but sorry, the Aviators.
Yeah, but the thing is, even if they splitting that with your own AAA ball club, the logistics behind that just don't make any sense. Clearly, whatever that moron's name is who inherited that team, I don't remember his name. Clearly, he's made some shortcuts. John Fisher. He's a doofus. He hasn't earned anything, and
he certainly isn't as bad as Jay Monahan, though.
I don't know. At least Jay Monahan can name his own players.
Maybe we'll see. Anyways, that's gonna do it all here for Getting the Whole, episode 173 for the President's Cup. Be sure to subscribe, follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course on YouTube at Getting the Whole Pod, at Underground Sports PHI. Follow the parent company. Get us. Keep on liking and following. Be sure to and follow on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. For Ben Pirro, I'm Steve McAvoy. We'll see you next week for another great week on the PGA Tour. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to Get in the Hole, the official golf podcast of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Catch us every week wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and be sure to and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Get in the Hole Pod, and follow Underground Sports Philadelphia at Underground PHI. We'll see you next time, and remember, get in the hole!